France 24's international affairs editor Armin Georgian is here. And Armin, bill has been portrayed as a compromise. But is President Donald Trump really compromising with anyone, do you think?
He's compromised in a very narrow sense by agreeing to avert a second shutdown, so he is poised to sign this funding bill. But of course, he hasn't given up on that signature campaign promise to build this wall. And indeed, today he's expected to he's expected to use executive orders today to declare a national emergency. And this should allow him to spend around $8 billion on border barriers. Of course, his opponents are saying there is no national emergency at the border, and there's a lot of discussion on Capitol Hill today as to whether this is the president overstepping his authority. Democrats saying that he is, and even some Republicans are worried about what kind of a precedent this sets. What if, for example, in the future some ultra-liberal president were to use a similar method to take some kind of unprecedented action on gun control? So the question of a precedent is looming very large in the minds of people here. As I said, some discomfort among the Republican ranks as well.
Okay, so you indicated there that some people saying perhaps this is executive overreach, that some people were accusing President Donald Trump of abusing his authority. People making those kinds of claim, those charge against the president, what can they actually do about it?
Well, the Democrats could invoke an article from a clause, I should say, in an act that dates back to 1976, which basically ends this kind of executive action by the president. But of course, the Democrats don't control Senate. They have a majority in the House of Representatives, but not in Senate. The other possible route is that this national emergency, once it's actually declared, as we're expecting it to be, it could then be challenged in the courts, in U.S. courts. But of course, in the past, Donald Trump has shown that he's not really too worried about making executive orders that he knows will be challenged in courts. You remember that ban on people from mainly Muslim countries from entering the U.S. He didn't really seem to be too worried about the fact that that was going to be challenged, which of course it was. And remember, with that so-called Muslim ban, a modified version of that ban actually was ultimately upheld by the Supreme Court. So he can look at that precedent and say, well, okay, even if the courts challenge me on this declaration of a national emergency, look at what happened before. With a few tweaks, it can go up to the Supreme Court eventually and be upheld by the Supreme Court. Also remember, today the Supreme Court should be more favorable to him than the Supreme Court was when he first came into office, because since he was inaugurated, there have been two conservative judges appointed, Neil Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh. The bottom line here, Tom, I think is whatever political institutions say, whatever the courts say, this border wall is a key campaign promise. He's got to at least look like he's delivering it in order to be re-elected in November 2020.
Okay, well, thank you very much indeed. Armin Georgian from our International Affairs Desk, thank you so much. Well, as strong opposition from